extend my warm welcome to all the viewers of Navshikar channel brought to you by Rehabilitation Council of India. हमारा आज का चर्चा का विषय है समावेशी शिक्षा और यह समावेश केवल शिक्षा के संबंध में ही नहीं बल्कि कहीं आगे बढ़ चुका है। समावेश केवल शिक्षा ही नहीं बल्कि समाज के हर दिशा में विकास कर रहा है। Today, inclusion has moved beyond the restraint of education and has stretched itself to other aspects of life. Inclusion is not only limited to the education of persons with disability, but also of inclusion of the children of the individuals with disability in the community as a whole, and to provide them opportunities to develop as a wholesome being and to be a productive member to the society. To elaborate on the issue, we have with us here Mrs. Annie Sham, Director of renowned Spastic Society of Tamil Nadu, also popularly known as Spastan, and ma'am has travelled all the way from Tamil Nadu to solicit us with her presence. Mrs. Annie Sham has been working in this field of disability since the past 35 years, and Spastan has been dedicated towards inclusion of individuals with cerebral palsy since the last 25 years and has been successful in including approximately 15,000 children with cerebral palsy into the mainstream of life. Mrs. Annie Sham has gained experience not only in India but also in countries like Jamaica, Seychelles and Singapore, and she wishes to see her dream of inclusion come true in India. Before Mrs. Annie Sham begins, I'd like to bring a point to notice to the viewers. Our toll-free numbers are 1800111208. You're kindly requested to revert to us in case of any queries. Please do not hesitate, since our expert panelists would be very much glad to answer your questions. Over to you, Mrs. Annie Sham.
Thank you so much, Shisha. I think you have put that into perspective. Today we would really look at inclusive education for children with cerebral palsy, because we are looking at children with various problems and how they can be included and provided opportunities, mostly educational opportunities, into mainstream. Persons who are severely impaired never know their own hidden sources of strength unless they are treated like normal human beings and encouraged to shape their own lives. Now, this is a popular saying by Helen Keller, and I think it is very apt. What we're really talking about here is opportunities, providing opportunities for persons who have various impairment, severe impairment, so that they can start taking ownership of their lives. The right to education of children with disabilities is more than just a piece of paper or a document. It takes accessible classrooms, trained teachers, appropriate equipment, modified TLMs, and most of all, the determination to deliver. That passion to have to relate all of that to a child with disabilities, like the staff of Spastan, I can say. So here we are looking at a challenge. Traditionally, children with cerebral palsy and those with other special educational needs have experienced exclusion, discrimination and segregation from their peers and mainstream education. Many of them are denied access to education of any sort. And it's very sad when you look around and you look at statistics. More than 90% of children with disabilities in developing countries do not attend schools. So I think this is a huge challenge in our hands, and we've got to do something about it. And what is it? How do we make this difference? Why is it like that, and why has it been like that? I think if you look back, there are various types of educational institutions. There are those who have their arms out, closed, I would say, first, who say, don't come to me. Then there are those that say, come to me, but you have to change to suit me. In other words, I will continue to be like I am, but you've got to come and change to suit my environment. Then you have this third type that says, come to me and I will change to suit you. And yet a fourth type of educational institution that says, come to me and we will both change. And I think over the years now, the last two types of institutions are becoming more prevalent, and that I really hope that trend continues, because we want more and more educational institutions to be able to say, let us both adapt and work together for the betterment of
the society,
and of the children who are disabled. So I think it is coming to that, and the trend is there, but we hope that this trend continues longer. So we also need to look at what is the problem. Definitely there is an inequality in education, and this is related to the problem of access. I will go into a lot of this in detail as we go along. Next is the rigidity of the formal system of education in terms of fixed time, fixed curricula, evaluation system, and the learning pace. Teachers may not be trained or have the necessary skills to work with children who have a wide range of needs. Inappropriately designed curricula. What does that mean? Inflexible curricula. And curricula that is content heavy. They are often the major causes of segregation and exclusion. Children are not able to cope with this curriculum. Then the teaching materials also are inappropriate for children with disabilities. Another important factor is family members not knowing how to manage their disabled child.
Right.
They are not equipped or trained to manage their disabled child because they do not know how to teach the child.
Moreover, these family members have to go through a long process of acceptance, denial, rejection
They
of
have
the child.
Exactly. So they have to first and foremost go through counseling to be able to reach the stage where they can start
accept the child, understand
and start
the child,
training the child. So here again we are all quite familiar with the different disabilities. Like we know, I think I don't need to look into all of that because everybody who's watching it or hearing it would be knowing about the different types of disabilities. What I would like to stress on here is cerebral palsy. So very simply put, I would say cerebral palsy is the commonly used name for a group of conditions which is due to a non-progressive brain damage very early in the life of the child, characterized by motor dysfunction, including variations in the muscle tone. It may be characterized by involuntary movements of the muscles, could be the arms, the face, the neck, etc. The part of the brain which controls the muscle, posture and balance are therefore affected in some children. Cerebral palsy is barely noticeable in some, while others are moderate to severely affected. No two children or people with cerebral palsy are affected in quite the same way. And many children with cerebral palsy do have high functioning cognitive levels as well. So one needs to look at all of these areas before we can plan any sort of educational option for them. So what are the problems associated with cerebral palsy? Are usually mental retardation. Some of the children with cerebral palsy have mental retardation, visual impairment, hearing impairment. They may have fits or epilepsy, locomotor impairment, speech and language. And the problems faced by these children with cerebral palsy are multifaceted, because it's a combination of all of it or some of it. So we're looking at posture control and muscle imbalance. We're looking at problems with communication. We're looking at problems with movement, coordination, and many of them might have medical problems such as fits and respiratory conditions as well. Learning problems due to mental retardation. Some of them have drooling due to poor muscle control. And also I would like to mention that many of them have problems with eating, chewing, swallowing, and some others have sensory problems. It can be hyposensitivity or hypersensitivity to hearing, vision, the various sensory problems as well. So these issues need to also be looked at. Here I have a few visuals as well of some of the students, and here is a young girl with spastic diplegia, but she is able to most of the time walk on her own, and sometimes she might require support. Here are two other students, one who requires maximum support using a standing frame as well as calipers, bilateral calipers, and yet another child who is in a wheelchair and who manages that wheelchair on his own, and yet another child who is on a wheelchair but needs somebody to move him around in the wheelchair, and yet another child in a walker. There are also children who use crutches and various other mobility aids, but by and large I would say these are the mobility aids that many of these children would require.
These variations would probably be due to the various levels of involvement with the child, be it on the physical aspect or on the other developmental areas aspect. Like we just had a glance of a child who was able to move on her own without support. Then on the other side we had a child who probably required maximum support with the help of a standing frame or a no frame.
Exactly.
So these are
so
these
looking
variations.
at the different variations.
Right,
Exactly. So that is why that baseline assessment is important, and looking at how each child has to be viewed as an individual. And need-based intervention. That's very, very, very important, especially for children with cerebral palsy, because of these associated problems that they have. Next we will move on to the various educational opportunities for children with cerebral palsy. We're looking at special education through special schools as we know it. Then we have the preschool education, the early child care education. You have the inclusive education through the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, primary and upper primary level. Then there are some children who have private education. Still others who might go for open education, like the National Institute of Open Schooling, etc. Still others who would benefit with vocational education, and yet others who might just require education within their home to start with. So all of these educational opportunities that I have just mentioned are to utilize the optimum services and the support that is there to be able to promote each child to its maximum level, so that you get full participation of the child.
जैसे कि मैम हमें बता रही थी, मैम कैन यू जस्ट हैव द प्रीवियस स्लाइड. जैसे कि मैम हमें बता रही हैं कि बच्चे के रिक्वायरमेंट के हिसाब से हमें बच्चों को अलग अलग टाइप की शिक्षा प्रोवाइड करनी चाहिए. जैसे कि कुछ बच्चे जो सिर्फ घर में प्रोवाइड की हुई एजुकेशन से ही काम कर सकते हैं. कुछ बच्चे ऐसे होंगे जिनको एक जॉब दे दिया जाए तो वो जॉब में ज़्यादा अच्छा काम कर सकते हैं एज अपोज टू दी एजुकेशन जो एक नॉर्मल रेगुलर स्कूल में बच्चों को दी जाती है. तथा कुछ बच्चे होते हैं जिनको जॉब करने से पहले कुछ एजुकेशन मिले, लेकिन वो शिक्षा जो उन्हें मिले वो किसी ओपन यूनिवर्सिटी या फिर एक प्राइवेट ट्यूटर के हेल्प से मिले. तो डिपेंडिंग ऑन द चाइल्ड्स नीड्स, बच्चे के रिक्वायरमेंट्स के हिसाब से हमें बच्चे के लिए अलग अलग शिक्षा के माध्यम ढूंढने चाहिए. एंड दैट इज व्हाट ऑल ऑफ अस फील इज द नीड ऑफ द आवर.
Now looking at inclusive education, as we all know, we know about the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan Education for All program that has been launched in India from 2002, and there is a very important component for us really, which is called inclusive education. And the objectives of the SSA is universal access, universal enrollment, universal retention and achievement. So these are the various areas that we are looking at through the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan inclusive education program. And when we look at inclusive education for children with cerebral palsy, we need to look at it. There is, I think I go back a little bit by saying that there is no blueprint to say that there is this rigid system that is in place for inclusive education for children with cerebral palsy. On the other hand, even children with other disabilities. But here I am dealing with children with cerebral palsy. So I would say that it should be a dynamic and developmental approach which should constantly evolve. So that is why I mentioned the word, there is no fixed blueprint. You can follow curriculums, but it needs to have to be dynamic. It needs to have a developmental approach, looking at the child's abilities and progress, and it should constantly evolve. It should address the learning needs of all children, youth and adults with cerebral palsy, and with a vision towards their future learning needs. See, we can't just suddenly look at children who are in primary school. We need to look at them from before primary school, and then what happens after primary school, upper primary school, what happens after that. So our vision should be towards their future learning needs as well. Then we are also looking at specific focus on children with severe disabilities. They also can be provided need-based intervention. I will go into all of this as I go along. It should also enable, enhance and strengthen the education systems and methodologies that are used. It should meet the needs of children with disabilities, respecting their differences. Acknowledge that all children can learn given the opportunity based on their abilities. And that is what we need to keep focusing on, refocusing on as we go along with the education plans of the children. I'm going to be looking at a strategy come concept of inclusive education, where we're looking at inclusion as our big picture, and then we look at bringing all children, that is enrolling children into school, creating this awareness, screening of children, assessment, admission, and that way inclusion. And at the same time, it is three-pronged. At the same time, you're looking at increasing accessibility, removing barriers. I will go into it in detail later. Also, the third prong is to improve the quality of the inclusive education for children with cerebral palsy and other disabilities. Looking at curriculum flexibility, I will talk about this. So what we need to look at it is just not just one way of doing it. There are many different facets through which children can be included into mainstream in different ways through different programs. I will here just quickly show you all also the SSA inclusive education details in Tamil Nadu, where 1,18,019 children have been identified and 84,000 children are in regular schools. Number of children in special schools are 78,662, that is from age group 6 to 14, and number of children who are in home-based programs is 16,224. Number of children in early childcare education is 8,485, 0 to 5, before they go into school, and alternate innovative education is 479. This some of this data was gathered from the SSA personnel, but what I would also like to focus on is Spaston's experience in the SSA ID program, because Spaston implements inclusive education program in 2 districts, the entire one of the district entirely and the other district partly. So we have, since the SSA ID program came into force, we have identified 6,250 children, but what I would really like to focus on is what I've put there in brackets, where 12.91% of them are children with cerebral palsy, And in regular schools, the children we have admitted there into regular school is 3,595, of which 27.24% are children in regular schools. And from special schools, 1,527, 21.25% are in our children with cerebral palsy. Through the home-based program, 670 children have been provided services, out of which 27.46 are children with cerebral palsy. And in the early child care education of 448, 22.09% are children with cerebral palsy. So by and large, I think in an average we are looking at anywhere between 15 to 20 or 22% of children are children with cerebral palsy. And this is just, I'm talking about our program that we are doing in these two districts through the SSA IED program. So there is a huge demand, I would say, for these children with cerebral palsy. How are we going to provide them educational opportunities? What are the options that we are going to be giving them? So we need to have to look at that very, very clearly as well. I just have a graph here, but the graph is just telling you the information that I've already given you, but just putting into perspective, it shows you in the maroon color the children with cerebral palsy opposed to the other disabilities. So we're looking at an overall picture of children who have been included and the percentage of the children who are children with cerebral palsy. So now we are looking at inclusion through education. So what are the various stages in which children with cerebral palsy can be educated? They can go into the early child care education. They can go to primary and upper primary. They can go to high schools. They can go to colleges and universities. The others who are not able to do the regular academics can go to vocational training. They can also get job-oriented training programs. Now here I would very quickly like to stress the importance of early detection for cerebral palsy. We in Spaston, we conduct early detection programs at all the hospitals in 4 districts that are adjoining us, that is in Chennai, Trivallur district, Kanchipuram, part of Kanchipuram, and Chengalpet. So what is really happening there and why? It is through these early detection programs that you can start early intervention. I think in special education and anybody in the rehabilitation profession would always insist on the early intervention. So here we are going even to one step further, where we say the children should be detected early. They can be detected early, and it can be done so that early intervention can start. It helps to prevent secondary disabilities, because we know if we start early we will be able to prevent secondary disabilities. And to promote, you spoke about early acceptance, and this is where it can start, that early, that acceptance level. You can promote early acceptance to disability by including the family, by sensitizing the family as well, and to maximize the overall potential of the child and ensure early inclusion in the education system. But Shika, the point that you brought earlier also was the family acceptance. So this is where the family acceptance can start.
Right.
You know, where they will be able to go step by step and be able to bring their children into the education system as early as possible.
Besides, they can also get to interact with the parents of the other children who are probably having the same problem.
Certainly,
and hence
I will be covering
feel
that too.
that they are not the only ones in the
Exactly,
issue.
exactly. So I have a picture here of of screening of young babies that we do in hospitals. I've just brought one of these pictures to tell you, just to show what we do there. What we have also found that just putting the child in the education system or into mainstream schools will not be so effective unless an intensive preparation is done. Now, what do I mean by this intensive inclusive education preparation? It means preparing parents. It means preparing the children themselves. It means preparing the teachers, the peer groups, the school authorities. If they are not sensitized to it, they will not show that enthusiasm in the children's progress, as well as government people. So here we are looking at various levels of personnel who need to be prepared for this. So just putting a child in without preparation is very often not effective. So preparedness is important. And likewise, like I said, to make education for children with cerebral palsy successful, training plays a very major role. Paramount importance should be given to training. Training who? Training the parents. Training parents on what the child is doing in the classroom, on the academic follow-up that can be done at home. Also the individualized family service plan for the child, because that way you're helping the parent also to continue this academic follow-up at home as well. Then you also are training the parents on effective usage of the assistive devices, because very often children with cerebral palsy would require some assistive device or some special furniture,
maybe some mobility aid.
So when they use it, very often if it is just given to them and the parent doesn't know how to maintain it, use it, how long it can be used, and whether they need to bring it back if it breaks or gets damaged. So all of that has to be also a part of the training. And apart from that, training the parent in what they can do at home for the child. So that is with the parent training. Now the children with disability also require training, because they are coming into a new environment, so to speak. So they also need to be able to accept the new environment. So they would require training as well. The next would be peer group, that is the rest of the class, knowing what they can do for this child, or making this child a part of their class, not keeping the child apart, but making this child a part of their class as well in participation, promoting participation among the children with disabilities. Then we have training of teachers, classroom strategies, individualized education plans, recreation activities. That I find these recreation activities is where children really develop, because they are able to they need to problem solve, they need to interact, they need to socialize. It sort of throws them out there, and all of these talents come out in the child when they are out in the play field with the other children.
And that to doing something that is to their interest, and not being forced upon or exerted into, pushed into something that would not be required by them.
Yes, and it is fun for them as well,
yes,
teaching learning materials, I will be talking about that as well. And the teachers need to be trained on structural adaptations, and again assistive devices, because the teacher needs to know the usage as well. And very often we get volunteers who come and help. They also need to be trained. Here I'll just have a picture of the different groups of people that we have trained. I've just picked up a couple where we have trained parents. So there are pictures of parent training, pictures of where NGOs have been trained on different disabilities, self-help group members have been trained, village education committee members have been trained, teachers again, volunteers. So this is just showing you. In fact, the top left picture is actually showing you a workshop that we had conducted for regular school teachers, and this particular slide shows you that part of the session where the teachers were supposed to come out with creative ideas on how recreational activities can be taught to children with disabilities as well, where the whole class, both non-disabled children and disabled children could play together. And that was really a very a fun session, because the teachers did not realize that these children also could take part in recreational activities along with their able-bodied peers. Training parents, family members, neighbors, the community is also a very important aspect for children with cerebral palsy, because here we are actually training them on how do you carry your child with who has cerebral palsy, because as I said earlier, this child might have abnormal postures and tone and very, very tight muscles, where they need to be specifically taught on how to handle the child, carry the child, position the children at home within their home environment, follow up on the therapeutic interventions, training activities of daily living skills, using whatever material that is available within their home they could be used, then making low cost equipment and furniture. So this is also a good, especially in rural areas, training the small community there, the neighbors. There's always neighbors who would come and say, oh, you're not sitting properly, why don't you know, and they come and help the child to sit up straight. So because of the training that has been imparted to them.
यानी कि ट्रेनिंग केवल बच्चों तक ही नहीं बल्कि बच्चों के माता पिता तथा बच्चों के साथ कार्य करते हुए वॉलंटियर्स तथा स्पेशल एजुकेशन टीचर्स या फिर रेगुलर टीचर्स को भी ट्रेनिंग की ज़रूरत पड़ती है हर स्टेज पर, क्योंकि सिर्फ अगर आप बच्चे पे सब कुछ काम डाल देंगे तो एक टाइम पर उस बच्चे को भी वही काम करने में आगे काफ़ी परेशानी होगी। अगर उसको अपने बाकी सारे जो उसके साथ काम करने वाले उसके इमीडिएट एनवायरनमेंट में जो लोग उसके साथ अगर कोऑपरेट नहीं करेंगे तो उस बच्चे को डेफिनेटली आगे काम करने में परेशानी होगी। इसीलिए जो ट्रेनिंग होती है वो केवल बच्चों की ही नहीं बल्कि बच्चों के माता पिता की बच्चों के टीचर्स की तथा बच्चों के टीचर्स और माता पिता को बच्चों को ही ट्रेन करना नहीं बल्कि बच्चों के साथ जो हम असिस्टिव डिवाइसेस या फिर कोई मोबिलिटी एड यूज़ करते हैं या फिर कोई भी एड जो बच्चों के हेल्प के लिए यूज़ किया जाए उसको यूज़ करना भी सिखाते हैं।
Training again need to be imparted to the block resource center, resource teachers and the regular school teachers. Then training for resource teachers only, because they need to be skilled all the time on how innovative new ideas can be brought up and they could utilize that in the classroom. Half day, I mean, you can do orientation to the community, parent teacher associations, to volunteers and the parents of children with special needs. Orientation also for the district project officers, the block resource center supervisors, because they are the ones who would be going around to see that the work is being done, and if they are trained it's easier for them to be able to explain to the teachers and even help the teachers to be able to promote this. I will now go into specific educational options like the preschool education, which is the early child care education. But before that, I will talk about the impact of orientation that the training has been for the parents. Parents get more involved when they are trained, because they are more confident on what they can do, and they also start taking turns in bringing each other's children to school or to the recreation places. Also they help their children as well as other children get all the government benefits that are available, and they assist at the block resource centers and the cluster resource centers where various opportunities can be provided to them. So we found this training, the impact was very, very quick, because they felt very confident about what that they could play an important role in the child's education. Here we talk about the preschool education, children attending Anganwadi centers, preschools, play schools, Montessori schools, because it helps to promote early inclusion. As you can see in these pictures here, it's both classroom as well as education, recreation aspects of it. And through early inclusion, children with various disabilities are included in the Anganwadi centers, where it helps good social interaction, communication between their peers, activities of daily living skills, and also therapeutic services can be done in these centers as well. Balwadis, we should insist that Balwadis are for all children, and all children include children with disabilities as well, and they can really bring meaning to this group of young children who really are not, there is no stigma there when they are that young. They play together, they learn together, they understand the differences, the similarities as well. Another area that children with cerebral palsy and very severe disabilities can go to are the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan Inclusive Education daycare centers. Now each of these daycare centers are set up in the various blocks in each district, and they take up to 15 children in each center. So they are children who are severely disabled as well, and they have a teacher there and a helper who will be able to provide the rehabilitation and education to these children, and they are also provided nutrition. So these children can benefit with this program as well, which is another option for them. Primary education, of course, we have to say is the foundation of the education system for a child with cerebral palsy. If we can improve the system, improve the access, and avoid dropouts at this primary level, we can ensure that there is a continuity of these children going to secondary level and higher secondary level, especially children with cerebral palsy. Rural primary schools, where most of these children are attending, as we know 70% of our population are in the rural areas, so 70% of our children with disability are also attending schools in the rural areas. Here is a picture of a child who's participating, a child with cerebral palsy, participating in the classroom activities as well. Now for the children to be able to participate in the activities, schools have to be modified. I'm not only looking at the structure, the architectural structure of the school, but I'm also looking at the teaching, learning. So a lot of activity-based teaching, activity-based learning should be taking place. Teachers paying a little more attention to the child with special needs, including children with cerebral palsy. Peer group being a part of that support system for the children. School modifications architecturally, ramps, handrails, toilets, parks can be, recreation areas can be modified with the local materials so that that can be used in these areas. So the children with cerebral palsy also will be able to use these facilities, because what happens if a child with cerebral palsy and any other associated problem cannot access the school, they will really drop out. Dropouts would be more because they find the environment not conducive to them, so they will not be able to take part in all of the activities. So it is of prime importance that the school is accessible. We have pictures here of some of the primary schools that are showing us. This is all under the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, where ramps have been built, and children with disabilities, children with cerebral palsy participating with their peers and colleagues. Yet another picture here with a child using a wheelchair, and these are all pictures in the rural areas. And this is inclusive play, because like I said earlier, I find a lot of development of the child happens here because it is very spontaneous. So this should, like we call this an inclusive play park, where children who are not disabled, the non-disabled children as well as the children with disabilities can play together. So teachers also need to know what sort of activities, what sort of games can they all play together, and that makes play more meaningful, and it's also a part of education. Again, just examples of accessible environment. This is in Spaston. And just to show you importance of handrails and grab bars. This particular child, if there were no handrails, would be having two people holding on either side to either take him to the toilet or the next classroom. But with the handrail, he can independently move around. So what I'm really saying is that we are quickly changing a child from being dependent to being independent. Also examples of toilets where grab bars and low seats, wash basins are all accessible, and also having an alarm in the toilet would be good, because if a child has a problem, somebody can come and help the child out. Now, like for many children with cerebral palsy, we need to have to look at children with age appropriate intelligence. For these children, seating and structural adaptations are a priority. They might not be requiring any modification in the curriculum or teaching methods, but their seating, because of their posture, they need to have proper seating so that they can attend the class properly. Seating, like special furniture can be provided, seats, special seats with here's a picture of a child who is on a special seat, and there may be children who require restraining straps. Maybe there may be children who could do their work with a cutout table in front of them, having a proper footrest, and that way the child is feeling more stable and more comfortable in the position, that they will be able to learn and to be able to contribute to the class as well.
So that the attention of the child would be more on what is being taught rather than maintaining stability or maintaining a correct posture.
Exactly.
That diverts the attention of the child.
Yeah, because otherwise the child is so insecure that the child is going to be thinking about
his own stability.
Exactly. And not actually giving full attention to what the class teacher is teaching. We also have children who may be sitting in their wheelchairs, who may be requiring various prompts to be able to teach them as well. For example, we have a child sitting at a wheelchair, and you're asking this child to do a particular activity where the child requires a prompt to be able to take any item from one container and put it into the next container. So this is also for the children who might not have that muscle power to be able to do it, or the coordination to be able to do it, and they would require these several prompts to be able to do that as well. And we also look at different classroom seatings where a child or two might require specific furniture for learning in a classroom.
I'd like to interrupt ma'am right now in order to summarize मैम ने जो अभी तक कहा. मैम ने सबसे पहले अर्ली डिटेक्शन के बारे में कुछ बात कही. तो बेसिकली यह कहना चाहते थे कि निशक्त बच्चों को शुरू से ही पहचान लेना तथा प्रारंभ से ही बच्चों के पुनर्वास के लिए काम करते रहना तथा बच्चे की क्षमता को ध्यान में रखते हुए बच्चों को ट्रेनिंग देना तथा उनके हम उम्र बच्चों के साथ उनको काम करवाना, उनके इंटरैक्शंस इंक्रीज करवाना. ये छोटे छोटे बदलाव ही उस बच्चे की कंप्लीट डेवलपमेंट की ओर बच्चे को ले जा सकते हैं. ट्रेनिंग के बारे में हम ऑलरेडी बात कर चुके हैं तथा ये जो ट्रेनिंग हम माता पिता को देते हैं, बच्चे को देते हैं, उनके टीचर्स को देते हैं तथा वॉलंटियर्स को देते हैं. दे एम्पावर द पेरेंट्स एज अ होल. मतलब कि जब माता पिता को उस अपने बच्चे के बारे में पता चल जाता है कि हाँ बच्चे की ऐसी एक कंडीशन है, उसकी ये लिमिटेशन है, तो माता पिता में एक अपने बच्चे को लेकर आत्मविश्वास बढ़ता है तथा वो अपने बच्चे की वेलफेयर के लिए, अपने बच्चे के अपलिफ्टमेंट के लिए ज़्यादा बढ़ चढ़कर वॉलंटियर्स तथा टीचर्स की मदद कर सकते हैं. और जैसे मैम ने क्लासरूम मॉडिफिकेशंस के बारे में कहा, कुछ स्ट्रक्चरल अडेप्टेशन जैसे कि ये छोटे छोटे बदलाव, जैसे कि सीढ़ियों के साथ साथ रैम्प का उपलब्ध करवाना, तथा हैंड रेल्स, तथा शौचालयों में भी एक अलार्म सिस्टम लगवाना। अगर कोई बच्चा गिर जाए और बच्चा किसी को बुला नहीं पा रहा है तो वो एक अलार्म या एक छोटा सा बीपर जो किसी भी सहयोगी को बच्चे की तरफ ले आए। तथा ये जो हैंड रेल जो पूरे स्कूल में प्रोवाइड किए जाते हैं, अगर ये प्रोवाइड कर दिए जाए तो बच्चा किसी की तरफ डिपेंडेंट ना होने की तरह खुद इंडिपेंडेंट होने में ज़्यादा आगे बढ़ता है। इस मैम।
Now, to be able to sustain education for children with cerebral palsy and other associated problems, as I said earlier, positioning is very important, because a child with cerebral palsy has so many associated problems that they require proper positioning to be able to attend to the class. They would require different modes of communication. They might require written assignments using scribes to be able to help them out. They might also require the curriculum to be modified, the content of the curriculum to be modified, and testing procedures can also be changed, like giving them multiple choice questions to be able to test their what they have learnt in the classroom. And I'll just go through a few pictures on communication boards, as well as teaching learning methods using picture communication as well. And here we have positioning on a prone wedge. These are all very simply and locally made materials where children can be provided these provisions. This is an examination for the National Institute of Open Schooling, where the children can write the exams either using scribes, as I had mentioned earlier, and also evaluating the children using multiple choice questions. Now we need to look very particularly, because we all talk about curriculum, so we need to see how can children with cerebral palsy, how can we plan curriculum and make it feasible. That's why we call it curriculum planning and feasibility. Kemp, Morrison, Ross 1994 had referred curriculum as content, skills and values that comprise an educational program. So the emphasis of any curriculum depends on philosophical, cultural and social forces that affect the school with reference to that specific society or community it serves. So it is very culture specific, I would say, because it depends where the school is, and one needs to have, just as I said earlier, that there is no rigid one needs to have to fit that curriculum within that society, within that community in where the school is located. So that has to be inculcated into the curriculum.
A lot of innovation or a lot of creativity would be required in this field to mold ourselves to the child, rather than molding the child to ourselves, rather than molding the community to our needs. It should be we who should be molding ourselves, our needs and our adaptations according to the child's needs.
I would say that, as well as the child also,
Absolutely,
coming out to be more familiar with that environment as well. So it is a balance of both,
right,
really. So now a curriculum includes a plan of what is to be taught, how it is to be taught, when do you teach it, to whom is it to be taught to. So the following points actually can help to determine a curriculum, especially for children with cerebral palsy. What is the purpose of the learning? What are the goals for the child's educational and or training needs? How can the curriculum be organized or categorized to accomplish these goals? So these are things that we need to have to determine before we actually set a curriculum plan for the children. So what is a feasible curriculum? It facilitates overall development of the child with special needs, looking at educational, physical, emotional and social aspects. It being sequential, flexible, dynamic, relevant and feasible in nature. which is aimed at achieving goals. So the approaches to curriculum is very subject based. It's a subject based approach and need based approach, functional, looking at functional academics, looking at ecological approach, student centered, looking at learning styles, interest, needs, teacher centered, where the method of teaching, their styles and their interest. Also, to plan for curriculum feasibility, we need to understand the individual similarity, difference and the needs. So we need to see what is same, what is different and what are the needs, especially for children with cerebral palsy. So any curriculum requires to include both academics and extracurricular activities. As I said earlier, it's formal learning as well as non-formal learning.
कहने का मतलब है कि बच्चे को क्या पढ़ाना है, बच्चे के करिकुलम में क्या इंक्लूड करना है, इसमें हमें देखना होता है कि बच्चे को कब पढ़ाना है, बच्चे को क्या पढ़ाना है, बच्चे को किसके द्वारा पढ़ाना है, तथा बच्चे के पढ़ाई के साथ साथ उसके खेल का किस प्रकार से प्रावधान करना है कि बच्चा सिर्फ पढ़ाई में ही ना रह जाए बल्कि खेल में भी काफ़ी नई स्किल्स सीख पाए. जैसे कि हम कहते हैं दैट ऑल वर्क एंड नो प्ले मेक्स जैक अ डल बॉय. ये सिर्फ जैक के लिए ही नहीं बल्कि ये बाकी सारे बच्चों के लिए भी हम अप्लाई कर सकते हैं.
So teaching strategies for children with cerebral palsy is inculcating the activity based learning, methods of teaching and learning. Support services are provided to class teachers and at the block resource center levels for specific needs like writing, maybe learning skills, preparing appropriate questions, evaluation, especially for children with MR and non-verbal children, cerebral palsy as well. Teacher training focuses on the academic inputs, the teaching learning materials and evaluation system. Orientation and training on developing inclusive play. So a lot of what we have said before is all being put together as various teaching strategies for children with cerebral palsy. Peer tutoring is very important because children learn by watching their peers. AAC, that is alternative and augmentative communication, using prompts, shaping, chaining, task analysis and self-evaluated methods, parental and siblings involvement at maybe the daycare center or even in the school, in the classroom, home-based program. So all of these are different teaching strategies that can be adopted for children with cerebral palsy.
I'd like to take a few moments off while we go for a short break. Well, we will be back in just a few moments. Please do not go. We welcome you back after the break. ब्रेक के बाद आप सब लोगों का स्वागत है. ब्रेक में मैम मुझे कुछ बता रही थी अबाउट हर एक्सपीरियंस इन जमाइका. मैम ने मुझे अपने जमाइका में एक स्पेशल स्कूल के बारे में बताया जो इट गोज बाय द नेम ऑफ होप वैली एक्सपेरिमेंटल स्कूल, एंड शी टोल्ड मी दैट शी हैड एन आई ओपनिंग एक्सपीरियंस इन द एक्सपेरिमेंटल स्कूल दैट वाज वे बैक इन अराउंड
1970s.
That was way back around in around 1970s when she saw the inclusion principle being used in Jamaica, and Jamaica being a third world country, it was quite surprising even for me to believe. Would you please elaborate on that experience of yours?
Well, at that time I did not know the children with disabilities were being included in school, but at the same time one wondered why children with disabilities were not in school. Very few and far between, I would say. But my experience in Jamaica was that I was at a special school, and this particular school, a regular school that was nearby, was taken for this experiment, and they called it aptly the Hope Valley Experimental School, where children with disabilities from the center were included into mainstream schools. And they found that these children, a lot of them were children with cerebral palsy, and they found that the children with disabilities were faring so well in their academics, and the teachers also took a lot of interest. I think it is not just the children, it is what they got the motivation from the teachers, and the teachers, when they saw that the children were performing, they were also giving them more help and attention, and those children used to come very high ranking children, and that is when it really I think that was a foundation for me personally, that inclusive education is the way to go, and that all children with disabilities can be included. If they are not able to go into regular school, they can still be provided various variety of options where they can be a part of society, included in the community and not segregated as it used to be before. So that was what I think we were discussing just during the break.
मैम ने हमें बताया कि मैम ने जमाइका में एक सबसे पहले 1970 के सन में शी हैड एन एक्सपीरियंस, इन्होंने काम करा एक होप वैली एक्सपेरिमेंटल स्कूल में. शी हैड एन एक्सपीरियंस, शी सॉ द चिल्ड्रन ओवर देयर, जहाँ पर सेरेब्रल पॉलिसी से अफ्लिक्टेड बच्चों को रेगुलर बच्चों के साथ डाला गया, और ये देखा गया कि उन बच्चों को अपने टीचर्स तथा अपने पेरेंट्स से मोटिवेशन की वजह से अपनी सेरेब्रल पॉलिसी की डिसेबिलिटी को वो ओवरकम करते हुए दे यूज्ड टू स्कोर well in the classes. We have a live example of whatever ma'am has just told, that inclusion as a principle is definitely the way to go. This is definitely the way that needs to be adapted in today's world, and it's not only a requirement, but it's a compulsion, and that is what the need of the hour is.
You're absolutely right there. Now we also need to look at individual needs of the children. At the abilities of the children, how can we use that abilities as a learning tool? Because many children with cerebral palsy are not able to use their hands to write or to be able to pick up objects like other children would do. So there are some children who might be able to use their foot. So here is a child actually accessing a computer using her foot. And similarly, we have other children who use the computer as a learning tool, and yet another child who cannot use her hand, but she can use her head and a head pointer to be able to access a computer. Similarly, a child with very tight muscles of the fingers are very tight, that she is not able to use the computer, but with a finger pointer she is able to access a computer. She can access her lessons, she can even write an assignment, do her homework using a computer. So we need to look at what their abilities are and strengthen that. Now looking at including activity based learning for children with cerebral palsy, what is it? It is enhancing the acquisition of skill development towards independency. It is also towards pre-vocational and vocational training programs, because it is all activity based. Evaluation criteria for the child in curricular and extracurricular areas. Curricular modifications as per the needs of the child would enhance the learning. So when it is activity based, the child's learning is also that much more, that much better, and the participation is a lot more as well. Here's a picture of activity based learning, where activities of various topics are used as themes. So with that theme in mind, groups of children are providing activity. It could be singing, it could be discussions, it can be working along with the teacher. It has proved to be very useful, not only for children who are not disabled, but also for children who are disabled, who find it fun and they're learning at the same time.
Besides, it increases the scope of interaction amongst the students who are disabled and the students who are non-disabled, to interact in a more barrier-free environment, to interact in a more fun, in a more creative environment, where both can exchange their skills and utilize them.
Exactly. And it is not like it's not a rigid learning, you know. It is flexible. Children, maybe the other children come out with various other ideas as well, and those ideas are also transmitted to the rest of the class, and they find it fun. And there will be pictures, there will be objects, all of which will be introduced during these classes. We can also look at we will look at using appropriate teaching learning materials for children with cerebral palsy, and it will be effective only if it will be effective if it is age appropriate materials. Prerequisite for development of skills, socio-economic and culture specific, like using real objects, using charts, using pictures, picture boards, pegs, clay, any textured boards, because lots of there are children with cerebral palsy who also have visual impairment, so they would require some sort of boards with different textures, and that way they would learn using these boards. That is also a learning for them. Functional training aids within their natural surroundings also, as per their needs, also can be introduced to these children.
जैसे कि मैम बता रही है कि हम किसी भी टाइप के टूल, किसी भी टाइप के टॉय को अपनी तरीके से मॉडिफाई कर उस बच्चे की नीड के हिसाब से उस बच्चे को दे सकते हैं, ताकि वो बच्चा अपने हिसाब से वो एक टॉय यूज़ कर सके, बी इट एक छोटा सा पेग हो या फिर क्ले हो. तो कोई भी छोटी सी चीज़ उठाकर ज़रा सी मॉडिफिकेशन, एंड दैट चाइल्ड वुड बी एबल टू यूज़ इट, एंड दैट चाइल्ड वुड बी एबल टू इनकॉर्पोरेट दैट वेरी स्किल इनटू हिज डेली लिविंग.
I've got some pictures of TLMs that I would like. These are made by the resource teachers. This picture is what I had just talked about a little earlier. The two slides that we have there are on activity based learning, as I had mentioned earlier. So this is the picture of it, and here we have peer group. They're sitting in a group along with the other children. The child with cerebral palsy or other associated disabilities are also learning together. The other one is a student-centered, teacher-centered learning. So all of this adds meaning, adds value to the child's learning.
जैसे कि आप देख रहे हैं आपकी स्क्रीन पर दो पिक्चर्स हैं, जहाँ पर एक डिसेबल चाइल्ड तथा एक नॉन डिसेबल चाइल्ड साथ बैठकर अपने टीचर के साथ इंटरैक्ट कर रहे हैं, एंड बोथ ऑफ देम आर एंजॉइंग अ सिंगल एक्टिविटी. सेकंड पिक्चर में आप देख रहे हैं एक बच्ची जिसको टीचर स्पेशली ट्रेनिंग दे रही है. एक इंडिविजुअलाइज ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम कंटिन्यू हो रहा है उसी बच्चे के लिए. सो आप सेम टाइम पे देख सकते हैं कि एक बच्चे को ग्रुप टीचिंग तक प्रोवाइड की जा रही है तथा वही बच्चे को इंडिविजुअलाइज्ड ट्रेनिंग भी प्रोवाइड की जा रही है.
I just talked about appropriate teaching learning materials. There are, teachers have special educators, I would say, and resource teachers who are in the field there, they've got so many ideas, you know, that they come out with the most innovative teaching learning material. So that is why I kept saying that it should not be rigid, it should be dynamic, where they use their own ideas, they come out with such interesting teaching learning materials, and the children also find it interesting, and they enjoy learning along with the teacher. I have a few slides here on the teaching learning materials. As you can see here, these are made by the teachers, and they're very interesting. They're colorful, and some of them are textured, some of them are using real objects like flowers, and teaching prepositions, for example, on top, under, and you have a bird sitting on a tree,
right.
And you know, a child can see it, and the child can see that this picture is different from the other picture,
right.
And that is, you know, on sitting on top, or not being there at all. Similarly, there are other teaching learning materials like charts, as well as picture boards. And I'm sure all special educators are very innovative, and they would come out with something that is very topical, and something that the children can pick up very easily as well and enjoy learning. So these are just examples of some of the teaching learning materials. Again here, the color, the texture, and some of them make sounds. So all of this in a classroom must be a very, very enjoyable environment for the child. So using this and using more of the teacher's ideas would make teaching very, very, I would say, simple as well as meaningful for the child.
As well as fun for the child.
And fun for the child, of course, yeah. Here's another teaching learning material methods that have been used. I mean, the teacher just did it, and the child is able to participate along with the teacher.
ये सारी पिक्चर्स दर्शाती हैं कि आप किस तरीके से एक छोटे से आइटम को किसी भी तरीके से मॉडिफाई करके, बी इट अगर आप उसमें कुछ विजुअल अलग दे रहे हैं कि एक टॉय है जो लाइट प्रोड्यूस करता है, एक टॉय लाइट नहीं प्रोड्यूस करता है, कोई टॉय है जो साउंड दे रहा है, कोई टॉय है जो अलग टाइप की वाइब्रेशन दे रहा है, तो अलग आपके अलग अलग सेंसेस को तथा उन टॉयज के खुद के अपने क्वालिटीज को यूज करते हुए एक सिंपल सा टॉय एक बहुत ही अडेप्टेड टॉय बन सकता है जिसको हर टाइप का निशक्त व्यक्ति यूज कर सकता है.
Yeah, and even the colors, you know, the colors
Absolutely.
being very vibrant. Now, the role of the special educators or the resource teachers in the classroom is really very vital, because just putting the child in the classroom is not enough. This teacher is there periodically to be able to work along with the regular class teachers to provide supportive assistance for teaching the children with cerebral palsy. In starting out with the physical arrangements of the child in the classroom, looking at the academic areas, promoting peer group interaction, because sometimes even peers, they need that first initiation, somebody to initiate a group activity. So that sort of helps them to be able to take it up, and from then on they are very, very comfortable with the child who is disabled.
just fall into place.
Exactly. Enhancing the training and learning experiences and using appropriate teaching learning materials, providing need-based assistive devices and enhancing its optimal use, providing individualized need-based and support resources at the block level, at the block resource centers, promoting accessibility in classrooms and school premises, and enabling the access of all the government benefits that are available for the child. Some of the government concessions and schemes are like getting extra time to complete examinations, exemption from a second language, provision of a scribe, provision of scholarships, provision of maintenance grant, provision of surgery. So these are some of the schemes. Some of them would vary from state to state also, but there are the basic ones are there, and the children can avail of it. So that information barrier that we talked about, parents, schools need to know that there are concessions that children with disabilities can avail. This is a picture of a resource room. This is a block resource room in the districts, where this particular room has all the teaching learning materials for all children with disabilities, different types of disabilities, as well as the rehabilitation aspect of it. So the child comes for their rehabilitation education maybe after school. And so this is the support, resource support service that the resource teachers offer. Then there's also an area where they have sensory integration, where information is taken in through the senses, processed and made into a meaningful response. So all of this can be introduced in a block resource center, where the children can, depending on their needs, these facilities can be used.
जैसे कि आप देख रहे हैं इस रूम में आप देख रहे हैं एक हर टाइप का टॉय, एक हर टाइप का साधन बच्चे को अवेलेबल है उसके पुनर्वास के लिए। तो जो बच्चे स्कूल के लिए कहीं और जाते हैं या फिर स्कूल नहीं जाते हैं, वह बच्चे इस रूम में आकर अपनी सारी स्किल्स यूटिलाइज कर किसी भी टाइप के टॉय को देखकर, टॉय को एक्सप्लोर कर अपनी स्किल्स अडेप्ट कर सकते हैं तथा कोई भी न्यू स्किल लर्न कर सकते हैं। यहाँ पर आप देख रहे हैं एक अलग प्रकार का प्रोसीजर जिसमें हम बच्चे की सेंसेस, सारी सेंसेस को यूटिलाइज करते हैं तथा एक बच्चे को उस पॉइंट से जब से उसको इन्फॉर्मेशन मिल रही है तथा उस पॉइंट तक जब तक वो उस इन्फॉर्मेशन पर एक्ट कर रहा है, वो सारा प्रोसीजर कैसे अडेप्ट किया जाता है, वो सारा प्रोसीजर कैसे उस बच्चे के लिए ऑप्टिमाइज तथा फंक्शनलाइज किया जाता है, ये आप देख रहे हैं इस एक छोटे से अडेप्टेशन के थ्रू।
We look at the instructional techniques used by resource teachers for children with special needs, including children with cerebral palsy, enhancing the accommodation of diversity through peer tutoring. I think we have talked about peers, but it is so important because it is part and parcel of the child's education program. Right. Peers help them a lot. Activity-based learning, individualized need-based intervention, home-based training, which I will talk about later. Facilitating self-motivated learning experiences in developing prerequisite skills through social inclusion at all levels, providing condensed learning syllabus training materials with age-appropriate teaching learning materials in all areas, regular ongoing transferring of skills to parents and siblings. Here there are this particular slide here would show us pictures of a teacher interaction with the teacher as well as with the peer group. Like I said, we have been talking about peer group, but peer group tutoring is very, very important in the classroom and outside the classroom, where the peer group is the best source of support for the child's education, child's mobility, child's positioning in the school, and it also helps in the self-esteem, building up the self-esteem of the child. Again, some pictures on peer group interaction. We're looking at recreation and cultural activities, where recreation and cultural activity for children with cerebral palsy and other disabilities plays an important role in the holistic development of the child. I've said that earlier and I repeat it again, because it helps to elevate the child's self-confidence, boosts up the child's morale, and the child feels, I am a part of this society, of this community. And I think that is what we need to have to, when a child feels that, then you know you have included this child. Here are some pictures of recreational facilities as well. We look at low cost parks with tires, etc. In fact, in Spaston we have in all the government schools, in all the block resource centers, we have constructed inclusive play parks, where both the non-disabled as well as the disabled children can play together. Now, cultural and is also very important, where the children with disability can take part in the school's cultural activities, whether it be dance or whether it be drama. these children can be a part of it. And we talk to the teachers, that's what the resource teachers, as I say. We in Spaston are doing it. We tell the regular school, the resource teachers, talk to the regular school teachers, suggest to them that the children who are in their class who are disabled can also take part in the various cultural performance. For example, even for the national festivals maybe, or they may be state level festival competitions, and some of the children have taken and they have won prizes for it as well. So all of that helps in the child's development and inclusion. All the time we're looking at inclusion, and inclusion is not only sitting in the classroom, it needs to come out of the classroom as well, but the child is part and parcel of that society. I mean, I'm talking about an ideal world maybe, but it is happening, and we need to have to facilitate and make sure that it is carried through in all areas.
And to speed up the process.
Exactly. There are other school programs as well that have been included in the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, like summer camps, life skill training for the children, cultural programs, sports events, like I said just now, participation in national level, children taking part in yoga, art competitions, sports competitions, dance, etc. All of these really help the child to be a part and parcel of inclusion. The idea of inclusion is when they can take part in all activities that are happening within the classroom and the school. So life skill training is something that the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan has also included, where these children have various, like they would have 3 days where they would have exposure to various experiences. Like for example, they can address the various it addresses various areas of the child's development. It provides exposure to various modes of, I would say, the environment, be it travel, be it shopping, be it helping themselves, be it doing domestic activities, visiting a bank, a post office, a religious place, or any other areas of interest. Like in Chennai, we take them to the beach. We take them to various, like the bank, we take them to a restaurant where they can sit down, they can order their meal, and that's normal people do that,
Right.
So I think this is that experience. I'm using the word normal very loosely over here, but it is that children with disability also need to have to experience all of this. This is life skill training.
जैसे कि मैम कह रही हैं कि एक बच्चे को, एक डिसेबल्ड बच्चे को कुछ भी एक्सपीरियंस प्रोवाइड करने के लिए सिर्फ स्कूल तक, सिर्फ क्लासरूम तक ही लिमिट नहीं कर देना चाहिए, उसको रियल लाइफ सिचुएशंस में रियल लाइफ एक्सपोजर देना चाहिए. जैसे कि अगर आप एक बच्चे को मनी ट्रांजैक्शन सिखाना चाहते हैं तो सबसे बेस्ट टाइम तब होगा जब उस बच्चे को एक्चुअली मनी ट्रांजैक्शन की नीड पता हो, जब उस बच्चे को कोई चीज़ की ज़रूरत हो और वो वह जाकर मार्केट से एक्सचेंज करना चाहता हो. तो उस टाइम पर उस बच्चे को मार्केट तक असिस्ट करना, उस बच्चे को नोट्स के बारे में कुछ बताना तथा उन लोगों के साथ कैसे इंटरैक्ट करना, उसी रियल लाइफ सिचुएशन में इससे बेटर और कुछ नहीं हो सकता. अगर आप कुछ लेटर भिजवाना चाहते हैं तो बच्चों को लेटर्स भेजने सिखाने के लिए उनसे लेटर्स लिखवाना, उनको राइटिंग पैड्स के साथ इंट्रोड्यूस करवाना तथा खुद वो लेटर्स एनवेलोप्स में फोल्ड कर उस लेटर को पोस्ट ऑफिस तक जाके दे के आना, उन लेटर्स पर, उन एनवेलोप्स पर स्टैंप लगाना, is utilizing the child's functional abilities, and this is what would be functional curriculum for the child.
Exactly. Because this is what people do in their regular
In the normal
life. So the child also needs an exposure in all of these activities that we just talked about. I will now move on to another area which is, I had mentioned it very briefly. It's called the National Institute of Open Schooling. The objective of this particular program is to help to complete the secondary and senior secondary school education through accredited study centers that are situated all over India. We also in Spaston, we are an accredited center, and on completion of their secondary and senior secondary education they can go to higher they can continue their higher education in colleges and universities. They can take subjects that they are strong in. Like some children have taken psychology, some children have taken travel and tourism, and various other subjects that are subjects that they would like to continue doing as careers in their future. So this particular open schooling gives them an opportunity. Again, we are looking at opportunities. So these could be children who probably would have dropped out of regular school because they are not able to cope with the
Content based
heavy
curriculum.
content, rigid curricula, and here in 5 years they can do their 10th, 11th, 12th. It's very flexible time, 5 subjects, no second language. So and you can have all the other concessions that I had mentioned earlier. So they are able to achieve, and they can also achieve their life dream of a career. So this again is opportunity for schooling. We will also look at another picture of the National Institute of Open Schooling classroom, because as I said earlier, Spaston is a center, a study center, and here we have a child with cerebral palsy who is not able to use his hands too well, and he has a scribe to write his exams for him, and he has just completed his